What's up guys, welcome back. This is Anime Fiction. You'll be watching What If Naruto Fused with the Mind Stone in Marvel, Part 2. Now, let's begin. Target identified, current running speed 1539 milliseconds. Considerable progress has been made in just over a week's time. However, it remains insufficient. His speed was satisfactory, but in comparison to the standard of speed, it was considerably lacking. I was in a state of flight where air resistance was negligible, and the effects of gravity were minimal, resulting in the absence of friction or impact delay. I am assigning you additional responsibilities. I spoke softly in his ear, prompting him to startle before his face shifted into a look of concern. You as well, Wanda. They exhibited a vibrant dynamic. However, I recalled the outcome of the recent search I conducted a few days prior, and a frown marred my complexion. Their mother was unfaithful. In fact, she was unaware that her children were not fathered by the men who eventually became her husband. They were indeed the offspring of Magneto. It is likely that their origins stem from a previous encounter between their mother and Eric, although they remained completely oblivious to this fact. Regardless of my personal feelings, it was essential for them to receive the unfiltered truth. I genuinely valued their well-being, making it impossible for me to retain this on their behalf. I will inform them once they have completed their additional responsibilities. I appropriately postponed it. I turned around and observed Pietro making a determined effort to catch up to me, which prompted a warm smile in his direction. Innocent. I propelled myself forward, leaving Pietro with merely a yellow trail and a countdown. Given his strong desire to compete against me, he should be prepared to give it his all. General perspective. Steve convened a meeting with Banner and Natasha to discuss their future actions. It is uncommon for you to convene a meeting when there are no pressing matters to address. Indeed, there is. There appears to be an issue at hand. Banner consistently demonstrated a keen awareness of such matters. Essential skills for evading capture. Natasha maintained her silence, anticipating Steve's forthcoming words, aware of the gravity of the situation reflected in his demeanor. I have recently come to the realization that my actions may have been somewhat self-centered, leading to several unfortunate outcomes. Steve commenced his work. In contrast to your situation, I find myself stranded here, with no prospects of returning. I have experienced significant loss, and as a result, I hold on to the sole reminder of my former self. Steve's voice became strained as he recalled the events that unfolded when Wanda entered his mind. Stark expressed his skepticism towards individuals lacking a hidden complexity, yet his own was meticulously concealed beneath a facade of normalcy. Could you clarify your statement, Steve? Natasha inquired, her composure betraying a hint of apprehension regarding his response. Unlike me, all of you have lives beyond these walls, and it would be disingenuous of me to not acknowledge my own longing for it. I want to assure you that your decision will not alter my feelings towards you in any way. Text. I would appreciate your assistance when necessary. He stated directly. The other two individuals in the room were taken aback by his remarks. I hope this is understood in the right context, but I recognize that everyone is eager to be out there. This, indicating the surroundings, is all I am capable of accomplishing. This is my sole remaining identity. The Avengers were created to confront global threats. However, this does not necessitate sacrificing your own lives in the process. I have no further comments to add. He concluded his remarks, stood up, and exited the room, leaving the two of them alone. Bruce. Natasha regarded Bruce, fully aware of what his response would entail. Bruce exhaled deeply before facing Natasha, his expression reflecting a sense of sorrow. I look forward to your decision. He rose and exited, leaving Natasha solitary in the room with a somber expression. Naruto's perspective. It is evident that they would not succeed. The Quicksilver's performance was notably sluggish, making it far from a competitive race. He arrived 3 minutes late, even though he was running at his maximum speed, while I had not yet approached my own peak performance. There is a notable disparity. However, it remains a work in progress, taking all factors into account. Upon my return, I encountered Sam Wilson, who appeared to have just returned from a mission, as he was attired in his complete gear. Hello, Naruto. Did you go out? He inquired while walking alongside me. Indeed. The city presented a remarkable view, although it was excessively congested for my preferences. He chuckled briefly before nodding in acknowledgement. Indeed, that encapsulates the essence of New York. Until next time, Naruto. I need to speak with the captain for a moment. He gestured for me to proceed as he chose an alternate path to Steve's room. Upon entering my room, the first action I took was to extinguish all the lights using a mental command. I subsequently displayed the information obtained from Stark on one side while presenting my own data on the opposite side. As I lack knowledge about the Mind Stone, please compare both entities and highlight their similarities. Refer to the conclusion and compare it with both my conjecture and Stark's conjecture. Task-generated data analysis has been completed. As anticipated, Stark has consistently led the way in energy advancements, outpacing all competitors. His conjectures and theories regarding the creation of a pseudo-Mind Stone arc reactor, which produced energy of a significantly purer quality than anything available on Earth, surpassed my own work. However, those pseudo-reactors would still not meet my requirements. I require additional support, as I was significantly stronger than Vision at this time and will be even more so in the near future. Could you please provide an update on the progress of my body scan? Current status ongoing what? That is unexpected. I anticipated that it would be completed by this time. The properties of processed ores are numerous and largely uncharted. Considering all possibilities will extend the processing time by an indeterminate duration. What makes certain aspects of this universe challenging to comprehend fully? All matters of minor significance seem to possess an inherent unexplored potential. Understood. Document all the properties and analyze their data in accordance with our understanding of the Mind Stone. Cleanse, rinse, and repeat. Task has been updated. Analyzing the properties of vibranium in relation to the data obtained from the Mind Stone and its impact on established abilities. I require some vibranium to utilize that does not pertain to myself. Page Friday for some vibranium. In the interim, it seems that some light exercise and insights are on the agenda for a specific pair. I considered informing the two about the possibility of their real father, but then I questioned the rationale behind such a decision. There was no value, neither to myself nor to them, should they discover it. They would only be more concerned if they discovered that their father had been a figure reminiscent of a 90s bogeyman. Understanding that specific detail was unlikely to provide any significant assistance to them. Instead of delving into a complex situation with uncertain outcomes, I chose to focus on my strengths and continue excelling in my area of expertise. By utilizing my abilities such as density manipulation and molecular deconstruction, I have the capability to adjust my size, albeit within certain limits. It appears that the process of reducing size proved to be significantly more challenging than that of increasing it. As I completed several of my scans, many aspects began to clarify significantly compared to my initial understanding. For instance, by utilizing my psychic immunity in conjunction with my limited control over electromagnetic waves, I can detect the frequency at which the brain vibrates during thought processes or periods of activity. It may seem like an outdated method of mind reading, but with the enhancement of the Mind Stone, it could effectively result in telepathy. The custom-made telepathy, combined with energy projection, effectively resembles light manipulation, or more accurately, hard light construction. The applications began to accumulate promptly following the receipt of my scan results. The data obtained from Stark facilitated a more streamlined convergence of information and hypotheses, resulting in the emergence of new insights. While there were numerous positive aspects to these findings, they were accompanied by some negative elements as well. Initially, it became evident that although my body was resistant to many factors, it was not completely immune. Vibranium exhibits unique reactions to specific frequencies, resulting in distinct behaviors compared to its other states. At times, it can assume a new form based on the frequency at which it vibrates. The issue with this was that vibranium was, in many respects, vulnerable to magnetic and electrical discharges. The properties may be significantly compromised if an individual were to exploit the adverse effects these two energy forms exert on the metal. This implied that I was susceptible to danger, which, although not widely recognized, remained a form of risk regardless. I could mitigate this adverse effect with my own electromagnetic field. However, this approach was not guaranteed or reliable, as it too could be overpowered. Frequencies are often an overlooked phenomenon that does not receive the recognition it deserves within the superhero community and related universes. An essential comprehension of this property was what Vibe and Reverb were capable of achieving in the Flash series. They had the capability to open portals to the multiverse effortlessly and could also disable the electrical discharges in a speedster's body with remarkable speed. Currently, I am exploring the potential impacts of various frequencies on my body overall. However, I am not making any progress in this endeavor. Are you aware of the width of the Hertz range? It extends easily into the trillions, demonstrating its vastness. In addition, the results of my body scan have arrived, revealing an impressive efficiency rating of 89, with a perfect score being defined as 100 by my AI. The terminology used, such as impenetrable, peak optimization, perfect energy synchronicity, perfectly malleable, and optimal adaptation, facilitated my acceptance of its 89 rating. It also underscored a significant flaw within this body, specifically regarding the composition of biological cells, which was rather disappointing. Although it was enjoyable to embody a robot, there were several aspects for which human biology was essential. I may embody vision, yet I do not represent the savior that Ultron aspired to become. Indeed, that alleged flaw remained present. I will seek an alternative solution if no other options arise. Additionally, I could implement some minor enhancements to my android body, such as integrating weaponry into various components for the sake of experimentation. Given the constraints on altering my height to any desired extent, the future modifications available to me may be restricted. However, this limitation can be effectively addressed through the application of nanotechnology. Based on my understanding, although Hank Pym may have developed the Pym particles, he chose not to disclose this information publicly due to concerns that it could endanger his family, as trust in government entities is often questionable. The public was aware that Stark and Richard were engaged in research focused on nanotechnology as a significant advancement in mechanical innovation. With both of them being blissfully unaware of Hank Pym's achievements, I found myself positioned at the forefront, though there was no one to whom I could boast about it. Regrettably, Hank was exceptionally meticulous, ensuring that he left no digital footprint of his research due to his concerns about potential loss. Although S.H.I.E.L.D.'s research was incomplete and offered no significant progress, I now possess a foundational perspective. With the incorporation of vibranium's versatility, I am confident that I will achieve results much sooner than anticipated. Integrating psychic immunity with the electromagnetic subset, the significant impact of the Mind Stone, along with its strong compatibility with both abilities, has led to enhanced merging results. New designated ability telepathy. Could you please take a moment to observe that? What would be the outcome of integrating telepathy, technopathy, energy projection, and electromagnetic manipulation? Perhaps psionic control. It is unfortunate. I was confident that the merging would not succeed, either due to the Mind Stone or the proficiency of the other abilities. Having been significantly influenced by the Mind Stone, I sensed that my telepathy was exceptionally strong, even prior to conducting any tests. Is it possible for someone to comprehend my thoughts at this level? I had some uncertainty, yet it is important to recognize that absolutes do not exist in this reality, so I remain hopeful. Reflecting on the specific imperfections of my body and the potential for additional ones in the future, I aim to create a construct that can encapsulate a significant aspect of my consciousness, the essence that defines my core identity, distinct from OG vision. This endeavor requires the development of a system capable of accommodating the exponentially growing trillions of terabytes of data while simultaneously serving as a supplementary body during the upgrade of my current one. This was the pinnacle of biological and scientific achievement. I was not prepared to discard it for a new body that I could not confidently assess as superior to this one. I can implement numerous modifications to this model, as it exhibits the highest compatibility with the Mind Stone, thereby enhancing the potential for future upgrades. The concept of secondary bodies was intriguing, yet they would ultimately remain just that, secondary bodies. Contingency plans for unexpected emergencies. I reviewed one of my previous research projects and examined it thoroughly. Task has been successfully completed. The data and information of selected individuals have been organized under various classifications. The information I was able to obtain regarding many individuals was quite limited and largely unrelated to my specific inquiries. Finding the Eternals was relatively straightforward, as I was aware that they retained their names and possessed a sketch of each, reflecting their appearances in the cinematic universe. I was satisfied when I successfully located them, or at least the majority of them. Several individuals were unaccounted for or had not been observed for years, which was typical, so I deferred that matter for the time being. I ensured to thoroughly review Von Doom's network without rushing through it. It is advisable to avoid provoking the individual if possible. The Fantastic Fours were readily accessible, as was the public information regarding the X-Men. They were still in their early stages, so no consecutive catastrophic events occurring yet. Minor gestures, correct. I monitored the ongoing activities of the American government, as is customary, particularly regarding the developments surrounding their Accord bill. I chose to overlook them in favor of uncovering various details I could find about them. Quid pro quo, everyone. They expressed interest in having me join their military weapons research, which was essentially a euphemism for inviting me to participate in their experimental initiatives. I simply did not have the opportunity to concentrate on them to that extent. While they could potentially pose a challenge in the future, that would only be the case if I were akin to Stark or Banner. They have the freedom to act as they wish, and while I wouldn't resort to extreme measures, such as harming them, my response would simply be to walk away if there is no display of resolve from others. In contrast to those who remain unaware, the sole factor preventing me from succumbing to paranoia is the advanced AI capabilities I possess. It is intriguing how a cold, logical rationality can occasionally provide assistance in managing insanity. Wanda Maximoff's perspective indeed. It is surprising to discover the impressive capabilities of a robot. I am unable to feel my legs, Wanda. I expressed my frustration at my brother's continuous complaints, fully aware that he was the reason behind Naruto's decision to extend both the duration and intensity of our training sessions. Could you assist me, please? I regarded his sprawled form on the ground with a hint of mockery. Naruto departed quite early, appearing preoccupied with something. However, he ensured that we completed our quota before his departure. He is more than merely a robot, Pietro. I found myself correcting him without thinking, only becoming aware of my actions after the words had been spoken. Could you please clarify your statement? He finally took a seat and confronted me with a look of confusion, accompanied by a hint of sarcastic mockery. His face did not require any expression, as I could already sense it. I'm uncertain at this moment. He feels distinctly different from any of Stark's armored suits or even Ultron. He appears to possess a vitality reminiscent of a human being. I find it difficult to articulate, but I have never perceived him as robotic or anything of that nature in my presence. It feels akin to engaging in a conversation with individuals of great stature, such as Thor or Bruce. I would have an intuitive sense that there is something deeper within him, though I could never quite identify what it is. Unless he actively demonstrated it, no one would be aware that he is a robot. He was so authentic that even the way he felt was. You are correct, it does not diminish the reality that he is quite demanding. Pietro asserted his point with certainty, and I found myself in agreement with him. From the outset, he has consistently prioritized our well-being. It was evident in his interactions with us, his availability when we needed support, and his commitment to training us to enhance our strength. Exhale. It may be advisable I tend not to overthink it. Naruto presents a level of complexity that cannot be easily grasped. Ultimately, regardless of what I express, it is inconsequential what he is. I am pleased that Naru is present. I expressed skepticism at that. At what point did you begin referring to him as Naru? This is not the first instance in which he has referred to him in that manner, and Naruto appears to be largely unaffected by it. Oh, that matter. I devised it as a nickname, and he appreciated it. He assessed the odor from his armpits and recoiled in distaste before turning his gaze back to me. Return soon, Wanda. I need to refresh myself. He departed swiftly in a blur of blue and white, leaving me solitary in this training environment. I observed my hands as ethereal red tendrils of energy began to envelop them until they were completely shrouded. He once indicated that the only limitation to my ability stemmed from my applications, so I found myself amused and shook my head at the absurd notion that just crossed my mind. That would be quite alarming if it were feasible. I am curious about Naruto's current activities. I considered for a moment whether to contact him but ultimately decided against it. I can inquire with him at a later time. Nick Fury's perspective. I find this quite displeasing. I strongly dislike this situation. One might assume that individuals with a deep understanding of global and cosmic realities would possess a broader perspective and demonstrate a willingness to temper their greed, thereby reinforcing their ethical boundaries when necessary. However, this is not the case. They appear to be individuals who prioritize outdated notions of connections and shares, seemingly unaware of the evolving landscape of today's professional environment. Despite my extensive experience, I found it challenging to conceal the irritation that surfaced as I reviewed their proposed measures to address the Avengers' increasing influence. The quality of the work was subpar, and considering I can identify the issues with minimal effort, it is reasonable to assume that Stark and Steve will notice them as well. If the reports about Naruto are accurate, it is clear that this situation is likely to escalate significantly. The Avengers found themselves in a precarious situation, facing not only governmental opposition but also internal conflict. This accord could very well serve as the definitive turning point that jeopardizes their unity and mission. Does Stark know this? Certainly. He has not made any comments since receiving the files. Maria Hill remarked while reviewing her own file. I believe our options are limited regarding this matter, boss. I found that amusing. What an interesting irony that presents. Nick Fury is unable to intervene with a group of misguided individuals engaging in activities beyond their comprehension. Indeed, you are correct. It is essential that they take responsibility for their own actions. I cannot consistently be present to manage their messes. Doing so may lead to them becoming overly reliant. I reviewed the files and briefly noted the name inscribed on them. The Avengers is under their control to manage as they see fit. Provide the children with their toys and a degree of autonomy, and you will observe the extent of their spirited behavior. However, I find the pace of this progress to be somewhat overwhelming. I am aware that there is a larger force at work, and I seek to understand its true nature. Who is moving rapidly behind the back seats? What has Ross been working on? That individual exemplified cunning and was willing to employ any strategy to achieve his goals. His voice has not been particularly loud, and it is raising several concerns in my mind. There is currently no significant information available. He recently reported to a base in Nevada and has been on duty for the past week and continuing. That raises some concerns. The Ross I am familiar with will seize an opportunity like this without hesitation. Please inform me of any unusual activities on his part. Certainly. I have completed all that was within my capacity. I trust that you all can enhance your efforts and make progress. The world has become increasingly unusual since the invasion. It can be quite intimidating at times. I reviewed the information on my tablet regarding several skilled individuals who have been emerging and presenting themselves in a notably vibrant manner. The world we inhabit is indeed peculiar. Naruto's perspective. Nearly 2 months have passed since the strangest experience of my life unfolded, leaving me trapped in the form of a powerful yet sidelined AI synthezoid from the Marvel Universe. What I have lived through thus far has become the measure by which I now judge all things. I didn't engage much with the team. It wasn't that I lacked desire, rather, I had other matters that demanded my attention. I spoke to them, sure. I had my conversations with everyone in the compound. But the hours spent outside were fleeting, overshadowed by the long stretches I found myself indoors. My attention was consumed by the pursuit of self-evolution with the Mind Stone, for it was undeniably the most powerful force I possessed that anyone possessed. I have tapped into the depths of the Mind Stone, drawing forth a range of capabilities, from enhancing my processing power to the fusion of abilities. In my view, telepathy was a rather flawed skill, akin to psychokinesis. Employing it alongside my other abilities brought a certain thrill to the experience. It significantly eased the burden and constraints I faced when wielding powers such as EM manipulation or technopathy. It forged a bond with the Mind Stone that felt beyond reach until now. Admittedly, I had yet to grasp it fully or harmonize completely with it, but it was a journey, wasn't it? I spent some time with the twins, but it was usually them dropping by when they had nothing else to occupy them, especially Pietro. Pietro, a speedster by nature, found himself restless when confined to one spot for too long. His hypermetabolism quickened not just his body, but his mind, leaving him yearning for movement and action. It also did not aid him that he received his speed a touch too late, which turned him and his sister into a mutate rather than a mutant. Perhaps that was the reason Eric did not arrive for them as he had in the other worlds. For reasons unknown, a quiet certainty settled in me that it wouldn't be long before he chose to appear and guide them with his steady hand. Now, I might be a creature of reason, but I would not stand by and let him manipulate their minds. Considering their current delicate mental condition, it would not astonish me if he revisits their former errors and distorts them in a complex manner that exploits their remorse. Being the cunning manipulator he is, he could certainly make it happen if I were still an unthinking machine, that is. I must find a way to guide them gently into this. To suddenly emerge from the shadows and declare, "The father you mourn is not your true father is a figure of terror, feared by those in power," is certainly not the way to begin a conversation. I'm uncertain about the depth of their trust in me at this point. It seems I must leave a more significant mark before I can truly share my thoughts with them. What? I raised my gaze and noticed my severed hand trembling, wisps of smoke curling from it. Terminate the sequence. I let out a weary breath, marking yet another instance of the trials I had imposed upon myself. I attempted to breach the systems of Wakanda with quiet determination, but was met with a familiar disappointment when it all fell apart. Much like the realm ruled by Von Doom, Latveria, the monarchy of Wakanda maintained its own secluded data network, severing ties with the broader internet. This isolation left the world in the dark, devoid of any meaningful information about them. Indeed, the true visage of the country remains a mystery to all. I sought to delve into their network, driven by a desire to glimpse their research materials. Most crucial was the study of vibranium and the remarkable way their young genius princess had managed to molecularly deconstruct it into nanoparticles, alongside the biological benefits it promised. The latter research was clearly not intended for my use but rather for some future endeavor. I find myself pondering whether my composition of vibranium and unaligned biological cells grants me the status of a true citizen of Wakanda. Isn't that a notion worth pondering? It was disappointing not to gain entry without a price, but such was the way of things, especially when even the likes of Ultron, Jarvis, or Tony Stark found themselves locked out. I took the longer path, experimenting as I went, but the setback has brought no worthwhile results yet. Indeed, the time has not stretched far since I began, yet the wait cannot linger much longer. In considering the passage of time, I've noted Sam Wilson departing the compound for extended stretches, hinting at the approach of a mission on the horizon. It was the shift I sought. I understood that my time would come, that I would find my place and leave a mark on this world. Yet, I pondered the path I should take to achieve it. Should I embrace the strong, yet enigmatic presence? Or perhaps the sophisticated AI peace mediator, possessing both the power and the voice to lend it weight? Both paths held their merits, yet perhaps I might consider the one that lies between. The individual, or perhaps the entity if we are to be precise, that occupies the crossroads where all the concealed and revealed factions of humanity meet the broader society. Choices, choices. I have a purpose, a vision I aspire to. I understand the steps needed to reach that destination, yet it is the manner in which I choose to pursue it that weighs on my mind. I held no animosity toward any of them, yet one cannot deny the weight of appearance. Much like it. Particularly in a world such as this. And let us not forget how the public will likely regard my presence, given that I am, in a sense, a machine. The refined gentlemen, such as Sam and Pietro, will likely take it in stride, but the masses who swallow the government's drivel will surely become a thorn in my unyielding side. I offer my indifference to all, yet the Karens of the world present a particular challenge, and for good reason. My deductions proved accurate when Steve convened a round table. He revealed details about a military base transformed into a terrorist hideout, where it was confirmed they were trafficking in stolen Chitauri technology and even some Ultron droids. The Chitauri technology was clear enough, but the Ultron droid, well, that was a different matter entirely. Only the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. were present at the scene, gathering the remnants of a lifeless form. It was clear we couldn't gather all the pieces ourselves. So, S.H.I.E.L.D. took on the responsibility of collecting them and ensuring they reached Stark. He needed to confirm that Ultron wouldn't rise again, using those remnants in any manner. You can never count on the government to stay out of your affairs, can you? Natasha remarked with a sharp edge. Steve wore a smile that was both frustrated and wry in response to Natasha's words. I was occupied with downloading and quickly scanning the data laid out before me. The base lay at the foot of a mountain, an old Irish military camp from the Second World War. Advancing toward it was a challenge, as they could see us coming, not that it mattered much if they did. What's our plan for taking this base? I inquired. I could simply remove the thing, but I sensed this was a kind of training montage for Pietro and Wanda. It struck me only moments ago that the Avengers remained blissfully unaware of the full extent of my abilities, knowing only what I chose to reveal during the Battle of Sokovia, and I found a certain satisfaction in that. Steve had a trustfulness that bordered on folly, yet his charm seemed to mask that flaw with ease. I considered sending the new recruits into the field to observe their coordination. He spoke, casting a glance between Wanda and Pietro, the latter watching with anticipation, before his gaze settled on me. What? I turned my head slightly, puzzled by his gaze upon me. He smiled at me, a knowing look in his eyes, as if a truth had just dawned upon him. I suppose I needn't trouble myself too much regarding you. I remained silent, for my response was clear enough. I shifted my gaze to the others in the room and posed the question that had lingered in my mind since the start. Where is Banner? Steve stumbled through the moment, his discomfort palpable, while Natasha remained an unyielding figure, her face betraying nothing. Bruce will not be part of this mission. Steve spoke, but I had already grasped the essence of it. Understood. Bruce's situation was different, more tangled than the rest. Accepting the Hulk was just the beginning. The real struggle lay ahead. There were various phases to the creature, and to eliminate one would only allow the other scars to emerge, manifesting as a monstrous figure of green. He stood as the mightiest among the Avengers, second only to Thor himself. Even I would find it a challenge to take down a fully unleashed beast. I would stand a better chance in a duel with the Thunder God than with the Green Giant. It wasn't about who held more strength, but rather the connection I shared with each of them. Perhaps there will be an opportunity to speak with him once the raid concludes. So, Naruto, as you guide Wanda and Pietro in their training, what are your thoughts on how they will perform? Natasha inquired, steering our conversation back to the issue before us. They will manage well enough with some oversight, so there's no need for concern. Pietro had shattered the sound barrier, slicing through the air at 2,000 meters per second, while Wanda, with her cleverness and skill, was mastering her constructs and hex blasts in a way that was both impressive and inventive. They both regarded me with a look of surprise, uncertain of the reason, yet it was the truth. The two of them shared a bond, a quiet understanding that existed long before they began their training together. The training sharpened it, made it clearer and more effective. I understand. Since you assert it, we must accept it as truth until evidence suggests otherwise. Natasha remarked with an air of detachment. Did I tell you about the time I bested her when she attempted to train me and the twins? They were trying to shove me into boot camp with the twins and Sam, but I couldn't let that happen, could I? It was a familiar method of asserting my presence, a clear signal that I was not to be trifled with, and I appreciated how readily Natasha embraced that understanding. She departed to instruct Pietro and Wanda in the method I deemed efficient, returning only occasionally to assess their advancement. So are we going to finally address why there's a bunch of Ultron droids in Ireland? Wanda questioned. Yes. Well, Wanda, there's this thing known as politics, and I don't know if you've heard, but they can be real bastards. They can be real bastards. Natasha finished Sam's sentence, thinking that Wanda was naive enough to miss it. And let me guess, we can't do anything about it. She said, as if she already knew the answer, which we all did. If we can get evidence, then it'd be easy to zip our guys, but unfortunately we got nothing. Sam's response: "I'll work on it," I said, taking everyone by surprise. We have the resources, we will try to find out who's behind it. It'll help us gain some distance from them. Yeah, and you make them want to put a leash on us even more, Natasha said. I understood her concerns, but kids will have to learn, sooner rather than later, that politics is the last thing they need to worry about. Yes, there will be accountability, but no government should have the authority to decide our fate or deeds. When it came to politics, just the benefits and protecting their own lives counted. Such things horrified me. They will want to put one on us sooner anyway. Better to fight the growing symptoms than let it fester into a virus. Haven't I always been like this? I mean, I've read Plato, Aristotle, and a few lines from Washington, but now I'm channeling Sun Tzu. Was it due to my increased thinking process, or something else? Whatever it was, I don't mind, because I'm pounding the heck out of this, Al Capone style. Why, I understand the reason for the talks going on. Letting those old coots decide our every line of action isn't going to be a good thing. Trust me on this. Sam interrupted. Can we please table this discussion for another time? The Accords haven't even been given a hearing, so let's put it on hold until then. We have more important things to focus on right now. Steve intervened before this particular line of argument could get further. I had certain preparations in place in case the Accords were ever granted a favorable hearing, but they will have to wait for now. There's no reason to worry over something so little. The Accords were meaningless until the Avengers banded together, and all they'd accomplish was hamper our movement significantly owing to their continual annoyance, which is readily avoided in most cases. My main concerns were how the Accords would affect the approaching Civil War, particularly if mutants and other heroes were engaged. If the comics are any indication, it may swiftly grow into something quite else. Tony can't come because he's easily high profile and we don't want the attention this early, so it's gonna be just us. Steve drew everyone's attention as he began outlining the strategies and options in case of any unforeseen occurrences. Naruto, can you get inside stealthily once we draw their attention? I nodded. Then you'll pave the way for Pietro and Wanda to enter while we draw outward fire to ourselves. Try and find out what they want the droids for. Trafficking, weapons deal, supply chains and investors. Anything you can find. We need to find the source of the leak before this becomes something else. Steve stated with complete sincerity that anyone who follows the news will understand why. Following the Chitauri invasion, high-level crime syndicates gained access to modified alien technology and were unrestrained in their operations since the authorities were unable to match their weapons. It is still continuing. Suit up. We leave in 10. The rest went to suit up, leaving me and Pietro in the hangar because I don't need a wardrobe change, while Pietro basically speed raced his. One thing I've observed is that Marvel characters were more willing to kill than DC heroes. I also saw that on our first narcotics bust a time ago. They both showed no emotion as some drug traffickers perished in front of them. It must be related to what they witnessed growing up. As for me, I don't have a strong reaction to it either. When running your activities through logical codes, the terms right and wrong might be ambiguous and difficult to distinguish. Sometimes I feel more like a robot than a person, but then I get the most ridiculous ideas that are neither rational nor smart in any sense of the term. At the very least, I still have sarcasm, humor, and deadpanning, which is all the proof I need that I'm still human somewhere behind this wonderful vibranium physique. Pietro said, gazing over the Quinjet's controls, "What's up with you, Naru? You've been quiet for a while." "Nothing. Just something probably inconsequential." That was my reply. Probably. Probably. I answered absently. There is something fundamentally different about the two comic realms. The heroes here were more realistic, or at least they felt more real to me, than the ones I know from DC. Maybe it's because I live here and have a prejudiced opinion. I mean, it's not necessarily about fighting cosmic beings, which makes sense. Marvel's Earth was depicted more accurately than DC's. Not in terms of appearance or promised nirvana, but in how the actual evils were revealed with little, if any, filtration. It's times like these that I remember you're not human. Pietro's comments piqued my interest with their delivery. You mean I behave human most of the time? I inquired, but he shook his head for a moment before halting and scrunching up his brows as if attempting to correctly express his thoughts. Not exactly. It's like, hard to fully picture you as you. You are hard to explain, you know that. I laughed at how he tried but failed to justify my actions. I didn't think much about it and turned to see Wanda approaching us. She donned a similar outfit consisting of tight leather leggings, a red corset, and a matching jacket over it. A little change? Pietro said when he saw her. Yes. This one's a bit more comfortable and I like it. Her response was the rest arrived shortly after, and we got off right away. The flight took just over an hour, and we arrived a few kilometers from the base. It was a little far, but it was better since they didn't want a full-fledged head-on attack. I believe this is where I will take my leave. Without waiting for their response, I triggered my cloaking device and flew towards the base, becoming veiled from their view. Point of view after Naruto's departure, that's a new one, Sam said, as his googles failed to recognize Naruto's signatures. Steve didn't say anything and only told Pietro to keep a watch on his sister, to which he received confirmation before the youngster lifted her up and vanished in a blur. Damn, even the kids today got something going for them. Kinda hard to keep up with that if I'm being honest. Sam whistled at Pietro's pace. Yeah, tell me about it. It kinda makes you wonder why you're even here in the first place. Natasha remarked sadly. Being surrounded by individuals like Thor, who was a true god, Bruce, who was anger personified and an utter monster, Tony, who didn't need to be said, even Steve, who was a super soldier with an inhumane physique, and then the new ones. Sam. Naruto. Pietro. Wanda. Sam was the least spectacular of the four, but he could still fly thanks to an exoskeleton. Pietro could run at more than 5 times the speed of sound, and Wanda was a threat when she deployed her skills. And then there was Naruto. Even if she didn't realize it, he had a strong presence in a room, even when he wasn't doing or saying anything. He reminded me of a serious, no-nonsense Stark, Bruce, Steve, Thor, and Wanda. Yeah, it was difficult to keep up with him. And here she was, relying only on her abilities and shock batons to rescue the planet. She couldn't help but sigh as her thoughts reached that point. Times were moving too quickly, and it felt like they were about to engulf individuals like her. Eyes up front, Romanoff. We're moving. Steve cried out to her, jolting her out of her stupor as they began to move. Do you have any idea what Naruto can do? Steve said as they approached the base's perimeter, which was patrolled by a squadron of soldiers. Natasha shakes her head. I haven't seen him use them much, and I didn't bother to ask. She'd asked when they first started, but the talents he told her didn't seem to include everything he was capable of. Well, then we'll just have to watch. Ready? Natasha nodded before they both turned to face Falcon, who smiled and flew to the skies, signifying the commencement of the raid. Naruto's POV shortly reached the main base, which was a cave dug into the mountain. Are you all ready? I asked the two of them. They both responded positively via communication, and the raid began. I materialized my body in front of a few surprised troops who were too sluggish to escape, and a blast of lightning shot out of my palm in a circular manner, electrocuting them. Go. I sensed Pietro moving further into the mountain, so I just phased through the floor to the one underneath me. I had my eyes on the duo, and I have to say I was impressed by how casual they were about it. Wanda followed my suggestion and wrapped a crimson contraption around her torso, complete with 2 wiggling limb-like objects that crackled with what appeared to be red lightning. A task had already been assigned to hack all of the devices here, so all I had to do was wait for them to finish and go through the collected data, so I spent most of my time watching them while also dealing with the stray dogs that came my way screaming and pointing their guns at me. A mental wave was sent from the Mind Stone, and they all pointed their rifles at each other's legs before pulling the trigger. Naruto, is that you? You felt that? I was even more astonished by her response. Yes. Interesting. So she could feel it even after I used the Mind Stone. What was that? A psychic burst. I was testing something out. I answered nonchalantly. They had no resistance to telepathy, thus they couldn't oppose it at all. Are you done with your section because we'll be moving outwards a bit? Pietro may join us at any time, so I summoned Wanda to my location, and she quickly joined me, and we both began walking outdoors. Can you teach me how to do that? It's way different than how I do mine. She requested an explanation. No problem, I answered before waving my hands and bringing all of the concealed warriors out into the open, where Wanda blasted them with her hex. You're improving, but your application remains linear. I meant what I said. She was a reality warper on a global scale. Things like this should be simple. She growled but said nothing since her whole concentration was on the approaching enemy, while I simply observed. It was quite lackluster given that the soldiers here were largely employing standard weapons rather than alien technology because it couldn't get around. The Avengers were taking this seriously while I was simply strolling through the base with Wanda at my side. All acquired data has been thoroughly absorbed. The cue shifted my attention away from Wanda and toward the specifics of the information I obtained. As previously believed, the guns were certainly traded, but the sources lacked a digital stamp. Most likely, it was chosen by signals or face-to-face. The data stamps only showed the routes they planned to take to transfer the guns to a local criminal boss in Dublin. It was a simple moving task that didn't need much information, so I couldn't learn anything from it. That's not to say I didn't benefit from this. Pietro, I need you to circle around the base and look for a man wearing a typical mafia boss getup with gold teeth and a tattoo on the back of his neck. Colm Fordyre was the leader of this mercenary terrorist gang, and it was remarkable how quickly he had amassed a large number of weapons and robots, even moving them across continents. I'm not sure how Sam was able to find this person and connect with him all the way down here, but it's great stuff. Let me put my intellect to work. Process all data registries in this base, including mobile phones and smartwatches, and cross-reference them with known members of this group. Double down on it and cast a wide net throughout Ireland's network. We are seeking for a mole. Task created. Task performed. Despite their best efforts, there is no way to avoid the internet in today's world. All of the data from every digital device, no matter how small, including the number of steps taken and the rate per minute of heartbeats, were easily accessible to me, and with those open networks from their phones and watches, I cross-paired it with any other new device that they must have come into contact with in the previous few days to weeks, and voila. I have my guy, or guys, and a girl. Less than 5 seconds had gone since I produced the job and analyzed all of the information it yielded, and Pietro came with Fordyre, who appeared stunned and perplexed by what was going on. I'm guessing you've never met a speedster before. I caught him trying to sneak away, but he was too slow, Pietro stated before fleeing in a flash to clean up the base surrounding the entrance, since the interior was mostly vacant. The man in front of me was carrying only one of those old-style burner phones, most likely to decrease the possibility of being monitored or infected with malware. Unfortunately for him, I had already received what I wanted from it. It was at moments like this when the Mind Stone truly shone. A little technopathy combined with an EM wave subset, radio waves, and I could already interpret it as an article on the benefits of breathing. When I was going through their filthy files, I couldn't find out about his secret relationship to American laws since he wasn't in direct communication with them. Someone else was the intermediary. ID already received his supplier's contact information, so I didn't need him anymore, but when I noticed Wanda standing there, curious about what I was going to do to him, I threw him toward her. Try reading him, I said. She gave a little pout and answered. But I thought they said I shouldn't go barging into people's heads. Then try another way. Rather than just barging like you called it, try compelling him to tell you what you want. I recalled seeing that vampire series where they could compel people to do their biddings and wanted her to try it. It wasn't something difficult, but rather a straightforward use of telepathy. Though it will be more difficult and occasionally fail to work on persons with greater mental power, which was regrettably not the case for the guy in front of us. I don't understand. It's just like how you use your mind powers, but instead of crudely forcing your way through like last time, try tempting him to stop resisting you. It's more simple than it sounds. I went on. I didn't feel like I was corrupting Wanda because this was such a simple use of any mental or psychic skill. And it's not as if she were a tiny child who is unaware of her own behavior. Am I preying on her trust? Yes. Am I manipulating her? No. Simples. I used a kinetic grip on Fordyre to stop all of his motions, while Wanda steeled herself, her hands glowing a familiar crimson. Don't touch him, I told her. Rather than pushing it forward, just let it spread around him. She responded with a nod of her head and withdrawn her hand, preserving her distance from Fordyre. Her crimson aura faded after that, and she continued to stare at him intently. You are already stronger than him in every way. He should answer to you. Her eyes became a deep crimson as she continued to stare. I could feel his brain waves diminishing under Wanda's influence. His eyes lost concentration, and his muscles loosened under my grip. She responded shakily, I think I got it. I don't think she ever considered manipulating people like this. What should I do now? She inquired. I shrugged. I've already gotten all I needed from him, so there's no reason for him to remain here for much longer. I don't know. You can ask him whatever you want. Some may think I'm insane for making Wanda as frightening as she can be so early on, but for me, it's all about taking calculated risks. The stronger she is, the better it will be for me overall. How did you come up with this? She said incredulously after giving up control of the guy. I was experimenting with my abilities and found that out, which is also why I stressed that you shouldn't be concerned about boundaries. Anything you can think of, try to make your magic do it. I flicked her forehead and disregarded her irritated expression at my actions. Now, 3 people were on my list, those who supplied extraterrestrial technology to the illegal market. Looks like it's time for an upheaval. These folks simply don't comprehend. The internet and media on Earth were mine to influence. I could drain billions of dollars from the market without anybody knowing. It was my backyard. So, what are we going to do with him? Wanda said, pointing to the fallen guy. It'll be a hassle if the UN views this as another international invasion after Sokovia. We've already gotten more than we needed. And here I was, delivering a phrase as if it were the most natural thing I'd ever done. Keeping him alive and bringing him before a panel hearing against congressmen and senators may work against us in the long run. Even if I avoided murdering as much as possible, I understood that letting this person live was not a smart idea. It wasn't whether he was good or awful, it was whether his influence was positive or negative. With a flick of my fingers, a pin from one of the fallen terrorists penetrated Dyer's chest and ruptured his aorta, gradually spreading with each pump of blood. "Let's go." I pulled her up, causing her to yell in astonishment. Unlike Pietro's movement, my heavy thrusting and partial phasing made it appear as if we had transported a short distance from Wanda's perspective. "Give me a heads up before you do something like that again," she muttered, but the only solution I could give her was to drop her from the skies and let her to perform a heroic landing on her own as I wiped out the stray from my lofty vantage point. The base was simply taken care of by Pietro, who covered for all of the current members, at least those who required it, while Naruto became a moving object of abstract dread as soon as he stationed himself above the base. Wanda and her constructions were able to travel about the area somewhat unhindered since she was a mutation with both attacking and defensive powers activated at the same time. Sam Wilson's duel was entirely airborne, as expected given his title. The snide comments and cheering he made at each difficult turn demonstrated how much of an adrenaline addict he was. Steve, as predicted, was quite the fighter, and he also put on an impressive performance by dumping an entire squadron in the mud and treading on them with only a shield in hand. That item moved as if it had a mind of its own, ricocheting at almost inconceivable angles and nearly always landing back in Steve's hands. Natasha's mastery of her fighting element put her ahead of the rest of them. With 2 fully illegal shock batons and stunners wrapped around her torso, her reflexes were rapid and dazzling, pun not meant, highlighting her favorite combat style. The cumulative combat effectiveness percentage of the group designated Avengers against groups categorized as possible future threats stands at 38. Upon observing their fights, I reached this conclusion, excluding Wanda and her brother. Thor, Hulk, and Stark were the primary powerhouses of the team, and in their absence, the overall combat capability was comparable to that of a world-class elite strike group. I am currently awaiting the implementation of the revamp I envision due to the ongoing governmental constraints they are facing. Once the accords settle, my strategy to enhance the Avengers will be implemented. Why not proceed with it at this moment? I am currently in a position where I need to clarify who is in favor of signing and who is opposed to it. Additionally, the majority of the materials I require are still in demand. The primary motivation behind the accords, as I understand it, is not solely the devastation caused by the Avengers' actions, but rather a concern that this unchecked group could potentially pose a threat to them. A reasonable foundation for concern in a typical situation, but this was not one of those instances. Their objective was to gain the ability to redirect the Avengers against their perceived adversaries. It remains troubling even now when I reflect on it. I arrived near the Quinjet where everyone was already assembled, and Wanda was casting me a disapproving glance. "Were you able to uncover any information, Naruto?" "Indeed, that is correct. There are 2 members of the Senate and 1 member of the Department of Defense." Sam expressed his astonishment with a whistle, while Natasha and Steve appeared to be anticipating such an occurrence. Pietro and Wanda articulated their thoughts with greater transparency, as they were not particularly accustomed to such situations. "Are you familiar with their identities?" Retired General Williams, Stephen Crowley from the Senate, and Teresa Makarov from the Department of Defense. "Excuse me, did you just mention Williams?" "Wartface Williams?" Sam inquired. He and Natasha were the most knowledgeable individuals among us regarding the Senate, as he had experience in a military division and she had a background as a spy. I reviewed Williams' profile and discovered that the name was not provided in a negative context. A significant portion of his face was affected by warts. "Indeed. Is there any significant information regarding him?" Sam crossed his arms, discomfort evident on his face, as if he had wished that this Williams were someone else. Williams typically aligns with Ross, often endorsing his viewpoints. He is one of the factors contributing to Ross occasionally behaving inappropriately and outside of his authority without facing any consequences or reductions in position. He serves as Ross' representative in the Senate. He stated. "Could you please provide me with information regarding Ross?" That is a name I did not anticipate hearing, considering my understanding indicates he has seldom left a specific military camp for an extended period. What could motivate a close associate of Ross to engage in the trafficking of alien technology? While the individual exhibited some eccentricities and a somewhat intense fixation regarding Banner, he was nonetheless a formidable general with a perspective centered on absolute justice. I doubt he would engage in smuggling alien technology for financial gain, as his annual budget allocation is substantial. I believe he would prefer to conduct research on it rather than engage in smuggling activities. This may very well be the result of Williams' actions in conjunction with the other two individuals involved. With a simple mental command, the Quinjet sprang to life as we entered, preparing for takeoff autonomously. That is an impressive technique. Natasha provided her insights. Gather all available information regarding Williams, Crowley, and Makarov from online sources. Task generated. Task completed. Later at the facility, I reviewed all digitally uploaded materials related to the three individuals and found it somewhat surprising that alien technology commands a significant price, quite substantial, in fact. The Ultron droids in pristine condition, which were merely lacking a power source, are of particular significance. The significance of that was crucial to Stark's Iron Man armor. I thoroughly examined their devices and uncovered all the information they had concealed over the years, including some highly inappropriate conversations that nearly compelled me to reset my system's memory. Ross was not fully involved in this unfortunate arrangement, as he was engaged in something far more sinister: genetic mutation. It appears that his decade-long fixation on Banner remains as strong as ever, and I can imagine that witnessing Banner as a free man nearly pushed him to the brink. He has been stationed at a military base in Nevada, and unfortunately, I encountered difficulties in accessing the operations taking place there. However, there was an element that captured my interest: genetic alteration. I find it unlikely that Ross would be content with merely a limited quantity of Banner's DNA, if he possesses any, and depend exclusively on it to advance his research. Since the emergence of Captain America, Ross began to question the validity of the saying, "He who has the most guns," and eagerly anticipated the day he would possess his own cadre of super soldiers. That had been the aspiration prior to Banner's arrival. The incident involving Banner significantly elevated Ross' aspirations to levels far beyond what he had previously imagined. Which firearms are you referring to? Which missile are you referring to? Which tank are you referring to? Even if a whole battalion were assigned, none could match the capabilities of a single Hulk. He believed he had outmaneuvered Blonsky, but the individual became overly ambitious with power and is now confined in a specially designed facility, enhanced by Tony Stark, to contain the creature should an escape attempt occur. Beyond Ross' reach. In the absence of these resources, he would be compelled to rely on the extreme methods for which he is notoriously recognized. Individuals with unique genetic variations. Numerous speculations have arisen regarding the new subhuman species. However, the majority of the public remained unaware of their existence until recently, particularly following the Chitauri invasion. They maintained a subtle presence, yet it was clear that someone of Ross' expertise was aware of them. Complications are quite frustrating. Honestly, the more I encounter the emerging complications, the more I feel inclined to disengage entirely and seek solitude to find some peace and relaxation. Based on my understanding, Ross may be down there receiving a mutation enhancement, or perhaps he is on the verge of exhibiting extraordinary strength. It's uncertain. Uploading their questionable schemes and secrets would have been straightforward. However, politics revolves around profits and benefits. Taking such action would inevitably place the entire American Parliament in a precarious situation. In such a scenario, all it would take is a declaration of "it's all fake," and the matter would be dismissed entirely. Videos and evidence may be manipulated, and all that is required is a trivial justification to dismiss them. This is the narrative that the newspaper will propagate, and it is noteworthy how the public will consume this information eagerly, as if they were particularly eager for it. Presenting all information simultaneously is likely to lead to certain consequences, and it is important to note that my character is still a subject of discussion. Should I reveal all of them in that manner, it would shift the focus from corrupt officials to the question of who granted the android access and permission to infringe upon the privacy of American officials. I prefer to allow them the opportunity to make their move, at which point I will be prepared to respond effectively and address the situation appropriately. I believe it would be prudent to speak with Banner before his departure. Maintaining our current fear factor is essential, regardless of his preferences. Perspective of Bruce Banner. I chose to wait for the team to return from their mission before making my departure. I do not believe I possess the inclination to leave at my earliest convenience in their absence. The conversation with Natasha was nearly my breaking point. Despite her belief in our connection, she had no place in the heart of someone like me. I simply could not bring myself to do that to her. Not subsequent to I have already assured Steve that in the event of another extinction-level disaster, I will be present, and that is the extent of my commitment. Given the ongoing tension surrounding the Accord and the international outcry, a code green was the last thing they required. They are currently managing multiple responsibilities, including the Maximoff twins and Naruto, the pardons for the twins, Naruto's identity, Stark advocating for autonomy on behalf of Steve, and Thor being off-world. Their situation could not afford another incident involving Hulk's destructive behavior. The situation would have been altered had Thor been present. However, it appears that the universe is conveying to Bruce that he should not expect any handouts. I could consider beginning my journey in Seychelles, as Tony mentioned it is an excellent location to set the right atmosphere, and it offers a tranquil environment. I was in the process of placing my bag inside the truck when a rather unremarkable yet recognizable voice prompted me to halt. "Banner, may I have a moment of your time to discuss something? I sincerely hope this is not the conversation I anticipate." "Absolutely. I have some time available." I spoke, and he acknowledged with a nod before leaning against the truck, gazing at me with a face that bore a striking resemblance to human emotion, flushed and red. Upon closer examination, I observed that he has been implementing certain modifications to his physique, particularly concerning his head. The silver sheen of vibranium that extended from the back of his head to the position of the Mind Stone had vanished, presenting a typical appearance, save for the collar. His neck bore the marks of a metallic collar that was notably high and enveloped the entirety of his neck. He was dressed in a white shirt paired with a black vest and black pants, a style that undoubtedly originated from Tony. "What would you like to discuss?" Our discussions have primarily focused on my perspectives regarding the Mind Stone and human body deformities, so I am uncertain about what to anticipate moving forward. "Are you departing?" The manner in which he posed the question elicited a sigh from me. He inquired not about my departure but the reasons behind it. "What is your opinion? You possess an exceptionally advanced intellect, after all." I cast him a sidelong glance, yet he maintained my gaze for a brief moment before he sighed and scratched his head in a distinctly human manner. "I believe it would be more beneficial to view him not as an advanced sentient robot but rather as an individual. To date, the instances in which he has demonstrated a distinctly logical, machine-like demeanor have occurred during his calculations for various experiments he aimed to conduct. This decision appears to be made without careful consideration. One emerged from fear and previous insecurities. However, I suppose it may not be my position to express that, correct? It presents me in a manner that may seem self-righteous." He clearly considered his words carefully, which was evident, yet that did not diminish the impact they had on me. The issue arises from a lack of understanding. It may seem that way, but that is not the case. The Hulk is not merely a creature that can be controlled. While he may present himself as friendly and occasionally exhibit signs of awareness, he is far from it. It requires merely a slight nudge, a singular error, and the entire structure surrounding me begins to collapse. I can clearly recall, almost as if it were a recent event, the numerous occasions when such a thing occurred in the past. The outcome remained consistent. The final outcome remained consistent throughout. Each time the Hulk appears, it invariably results in individuals being harmed. The burden has persisted ever since it emerged within me. I cannot afford to face another rampage, Naruto. Not a single one. Do they believe I have an affinity for this? I am pleased with my decision. This has long been the primary environment in which I feel completely accepted. However, I must depart as there is no remedy for my condition. Confront the reality. I am the central driving force of the team. I am a dual-purpose instrument. I needed to exercise restraint to prevent my emotions from overwhelming me or giving the impression that I felt trapped. I must acknowledge the validity of your statements. My primary purpose for being here is to persuade you to reconsider your decision to leave, though I recognize that this may come across as somewhat presumptuous. I do not possess all knowledge, after all. He spoke in a tone that was noticeably lower as he conveyed that message. I cannot hold him accountable, as I am confident he approached his calculations with objectivity regarding the significance of the Avengers' unity. However, there are certain matters that must be disregarded, regardless of their perceived importance. I have reservations about the accord that the UN is attempting to advance, as I am acutely aware of the complexities involved. This understanding has contributed to my decision not to be present in this situation. That is not the case. I stated. in proposing an idea that explores the possibility of being fully aware of your alter ego's actions. What if it were possible to communicate effectively with the Hulk? His question caught me off guard, but that feeling quickly subsided as it mirrored my own thoughts since the pivotal day. However, the subsequent series of destructive events led me to reconsider my perspective. That is not feasible, Naruto. Please refrain from doing that. Please refrain from instilling hope. While it may seem bold to assert this, I am confident in its feasibility. What is the matter? How is that possible? If someone else had made this statement, I would have disregarded it. However, Naruto was an exception. Even at this moment, none of us fully grasped his potential. Fundamental psychology recognized the presence of others. It is understood that the Hulk represents a distinct identity. Therefore, the objective is to obscure the boundaries between the two entities as thoroughly as possible while seeking to comprehend the commonalities that exist within those blurred boundaries. He provided a detailed explanation. How do you suggest I proceed with that? We do not share a close relationship, contrary to any assumptions that may arise from his collaboration. He cast a glance that felt quite familiar, almost as if he were implying my lack of intelligence. What other methods can be employed to achieve that? It will be necessary to alternate between Banner and Hulk regularly until a mutual understanding is achieved. To a certain degree, I hold the view that his mental fortitude significantly surpasses yours. I was taken aback by the absurd statements made by Naruto, delivered in a manner that suggested they were entirely commonplace. Regularly alternating between my own persona and that of the Hulk. Was he unable to comprehend what I communicated? I release that entity, and all it will do is cause disruption until it loses interest. Understood. The lack of intelligence may stem from Stark, or perhaps from Jarvis' psychological evaluation of his creator. Otherwise, this fully sentient synthezoid would not articulate such unconventional statements. Nevertheless, what was all I could articulate? Eliminate unnecessary complexities and streamline all other aspects. How can you anticipate having a conversation with something you consistently distance yourself from? Due to the inability to communicate with the Hulk. I inhaled deeply and slowly to steady my racing heart after raising my voice at Naruto, who remained still, patiently allowing me to regain my composure. It is important to recognize that this statement is not accurate, correct? All team members have engaged in discussions with him, and Natasha can attest to this with confidence. What is the reason for your lack of interest in this task? I am currently struggling to comprehend his statements at this moment. Consider engaging in a conversation with the Hulk. How was that achievable? Feel free to take the necessary time to consider your options. I am available to assist you should you choose to pursue this opportunity. He rose and began to walk back to the compound, but paused a few yards from me and turned to face me. I possess information suggesting that Ross is managing or preparing to initiate a genetic mutation experiment. Please utilize that piece of information as you see fit. With that, he departed. It appears there is a moment of frustration. I require some time to gather my thoughts. I entered the vehicle and proceeded to drive away. I required a location free from human presence to restore my mental clarity. Stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching this amazing video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel for more content. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.